Alright, brothers. Today, I have a very important announcement to make. I can finally stop making just math videos. That's right. I can now finally open up to new subjects like in the past because I'm getting tired of these freaking math videos. Alright, finally today, you're gonna get different things. So today, history. Alright? And yes, history. Today we're gonna do a very, very complex review about the 13 colonies because pretty damn sure all of those math videos might have burned off all the memories from that. So, it's the 1600s. This is America, so I'll just draw a really bad portrayal of it. Please do not insult me in the comments about like, your art is terrible. I don't care if my art is terrible. I'm trying to educate you, not make you goddamn happy, alright? Lower your expectations, buddy. So, this is America. 1600s. So colonies, they were discovered in the 1500s. So this is like 1600s, a couple years later. So this is the original part. All right. Some colonies here were just over there for religious freedom, because back in Europe and England, only Christianity or the Church of England. All right. So it sucked. And so the Puritans, Quakers, etc., they all went here. And they were split into 13 states, 13 colonies, because England didn't see them as states, they saw them as colonies, all right? So they were split into New English colonies, upper colonies, and southern colonies. And and then up here was the French, down there was the Spanish, again, up here was the French. The French, they weren't like the Spaniards and the Englishmen. They wanted, like, what in the New World could help us back in France? So, they weren't thinking about establishing an empire. They were just thinking, what can we use here to exploit to get more materials to France? And plus, they were practically dominating the fur trade. That's why that's why some Canadians speak French, because they dominated the fur trade in Canada. Then down here in Spain, they developed Mexico, traditions down there, New Mexico, Santa Fe, etc. All right. And we're here, the English people were just living. And of course, there was a little bit more from religious freedom there. And also, quick fact is that New York, a colony and now a state, wasn't actually called New York. It was called New Amsterdam, because back then it was a Dutch colony. But then the Dutch people were like, so we're still staying here, but you're gonna be in charge? Guess that's fine. So they sold it to England and they turned it to New York because, the owner, they decided to name after his brother, who apparently had York in his name. So that's why it's called New York, because his brother name was York. So it could have been New anything, all right? So luckily it's New York. And then, 13 colonies, there were three things that were important: minerals, plantations, and slaves, all right? The southern states, they were, because of course, temperature, different areas. So, this area here was more reliant on the slave trade. And plus, there was a trade called, the triangle trade, Europe to Americas, Americas to Africa, Africa back into Europe, and then to America again, because it's a shape of a triangle. So what it was doing, this is very humane, and that's why he wasn't doing more, it was slavery. They captured people from Africa and then put them into Europe and then shipped them to America. And some people weren't actually slaves, they were just temporary workers, because England, some people were too poor. They're like, rich people were like, hey, I'll pay for your trip to the New World. You just have to work for me for 7 years. And they're like, usually they accept because they still get paid, they're still Englishmen. Unlike the slaves who just get whipped and forced to work in the field. Because the two main crops that were grown at the time were tobacco and cotton. Tobacco and cotton, very important. One's for smoking, one's for wearing clothes. Their clothes are made of cotton. So, they lived there. And then, they're English people. They had a war with France. Pretty bad. They lost a lot of money, because now England is broke. So they decided, what, we're going to tax the absolute shit out of our colonies. So that's what they did. They taxed a lot more on tariffs, trade, tea, etc. And, they were not happy about this. So they decided to boycott. And, it didn't work. So then they started getting pissed off at each other. And then the peak of the tension came on the Boston Tea Party when a bunch of revolutionists, they went onto a British ship and then they kicked and threw the tea into the sea, and they were like, pissed off because they raised the price of tea without even telling them. So that's not gonna go well. So there was a Revolutionary War. So this is like a couple hundred years after the 13 colonies, and then boom, America, free country. So a fun fact is that could have been it could have split into 13 states, but it decided to stay together. So yeah, the future would have been a lot different because if they split into 13 states, because it's not one massive, powerful country. Because Alaska wouldn't even be there because they probably wouldn't ever discover Alaska, and they'd likely just fight even if they discovered it. So they were rather small, and then they got Florida, some areas around here, and then they bought the Louisiana Purchase, which is now giving them here, and then they buy Texas, which is this little area down here, and then they just go over here, all right? Because Oregon and the gold rush, the gold rush when people found out there was gold in the water. So yeah, right now America doing rather well, and then boom, they find out there's a Russian Empire, and the Russian Empire was like, "Hey, we want to sell you Alaska. You want it?" And they were like, "Hell yeah, man, give me that." And Russia sold Alaska for a pretty cheap price. So now, boom, you got a little piece of land up there, and even better, there's lots of materials in there. Woo! Big win for the Americans, all right? And then they discover Hawaii, and then they colonize the shit out of those couple tiny goddamn islands. And then this crazy guy, I don't know what his name was, but apparently this guy was really into expansionism. He wanted to expand by Canadian states, expand to the Caribbean, by Greenland, from Iceland. But of course, Congress was like, "Nuh-uh, we're isolationists. We're not gonna go anywhere. Let them do the work." So for most of the time, U.S. isolationist. It was just basically almost cut off from everything. There was still trade and stuff, but they were involved in any outside conflicts. But then, boom, World War One. So they still didn't do anything. I mean, come on, be honest. So then they discovered the Zimmerman telegram. Basically, this telegram, Germany was telling Mexico, like, "Hey, you attack U.S., we'll help you get some land from them." And Mexico was commenting it, and America pretty pissed off because stupid country all the way in the Europe tries to attack us. Nuh-uh. So in alternate universe, if they try to attack, they still lose miserably. Because let's be honest here, a bunch of untrained Mexican cartels versus a fully trained American army, yeah, they ain't winning. So boom, they go into World War One, and thanks to the World War One soldiers, they win. Allied victory. So everything is well, and then Soviet Union is coming. They were like, hallelujah. So they're communists, all right? So now, two sides. U.S. on the west, democracy. Soviet Union, east, communism. So one side split evenly, but you have multiple famines. And then they're split unevenly, but there's less famine. So then, boom, Great Depression hits. Soviet Union, not even affected that much. Because let's be honest here, it's communist. It's social state. It's already bad enough. So it wouldn't even be affected. But America, nuh-uh. Bam, stock market crashes. People go broke, all right? A bunch of random foods were invented. Schools were shitty and stuff. So all of that was happening until World War II, all right? World War II. So Nazi Germany, Hitler was going crazy and everything. So they decided to fight back. And, America didn't really intervene. They were like, nah, we're in a depression, man. We ain't trying to go to another war. Then Japan was like, boom, I attacked Pearl Harbor. What are you going to do about it? In America, let's just say they were happy. Men went back to war, and women took their jobs to build war machines, make bullets, make rations, etc. This was, I think, one of the only times women actually lived up to their name, all right? Because nowadays, this is a bunch of weak feminists, all right? Come on, women, do better. Your goddamn grandmas and great-grandmas will do better than you. Let's be honest here. So, they attacked Germany because, they attacked their allies, attacked them, so they're pissed. So they joined the Allies. They liberate France in 1944, and then with the help of the Soviet Union and the newly revived France and Britain and other countries that were helping them, they successfully defeated Germany and then split onto themselves. So all three of the other countries, they were like, democracy. But then Soviet Union, it's a communist country. It wants a state to itself, became another slave state. You know what I mean? Maybe like a working state. That's what they call it, but actually it was slavery. This was building a Berlin Wall and then the stuff, and Germany wouldn't be reunited until 1990, and then Soviet Union would fall after that. So of course, the America, overly democratic, all right? They attacked every country trying to become communist, except for Cuba because, a little too risky. And they tried to stop revolts and stuff, and it would fail, all right? And then their biggest mistake, attacking my home country, Vietnam. Because even though Vietnamese, we took more casualties, we banged the shit out of those American infiltrators, all right? Like, let's be honest here. What did the Vietnamese do? Your allies, friends, they colonized us in the first place and you didn't do anything about it. So what's the point of attacking us? And plus, they lost hard. In fact, in Vietnam, there's like a new movie that just came out. It was called, what's it called? Red Rain or something. And goddamn, is it awesome. And it also shows American war brutality. Like, no joke. You American people sent in flamethrower tanks. You guys burn them alive. Don't you guys at least have the decency to finish them off quickly? Like, come on. That is just wrong. Alright? So right now, America, still very messed up country. Trump as president, gay people, feminists, etc. So let's just hope, and also, change the name from Department of Defense to Department of War. Let's just hope that Trump doesn't go ass crazy and decide to infiltrate the whole planet. Alright? Alright, well, that's a pretty long video. I'm done talking here. Goodbye. I'll see you next time. Bitch.